What's going on, everybody? So in this section, we're going to talk about what are the actual goals of cold calling, right? Why do people respond? Why should you do it? And what do you want the outcome to be? And we're going to dive into all of that in this section. Okay, so what exactly is cold calling? Well, cold calling is basically making a phone call to a prospect unexpectedly with intentions to work with them, right? So cold call, using the terminology cold, it means that the person doesn't really know who you are. They may have never even heard of you before. And you're basically giving them a call and they don't expect your call and you're calling them out of the blue, and your intentions are to start a conversation to see if it makes sense to work together. If it does make sense to work together, great. But if not, totally okay, right? So this is different from a warm call where, let's say you meet someone in person and then they say, hey, give me a call later, right? If that's the case, that's not a cold call, that's like a warm call. Cold call is they have no idea who you are, but you're able to start a conversation and do business with this person. So a question that people have when it comes to cold calling is, why would someone even respond well to a cold call, right? If they don't expect a call from you, they don't know who you are, they don't know why you're calling, why should they positively respond to a cold call and start a real business conversation, right? And that is a fair question. Well, here's a reason for why people respond to cold calls. When you're doing sales, right? Essentially, most people fall into this type of pyramid, okay? The first step of this pyramid is that, people are unaware of their pains, right? And this is going to be true for whether it's cold calling, cold emailing, and general selling, okay? Okay, so at the stage where people are unaware of their pains, right? So high-level decision makers might be going about their day, going about their life, unaware that they have problems, right? They don't know if they have a problem. They might already be using your competitor, but they may not realize that there are better solutions available on the market. Or maybe they're just going about their day and they feel like they don't have any type of problems, so there's no reason to buy anything, right? So when you're cold calling someone, you might call someone who is unaware of their problems and they don't know why they should buy your product and services. So the next phase of selling is to make them aware of their pains. So when somebody is aware of their pains, right, either they are already aware or you're making them aware. Maybe they know they have a problem, but maybe right now it's not a priority to fix it, right? Or maybe they want to fix the problem, but they haven't had time to do it yet. And again, it's not a priority. Or maybe they have a problem, but they just don't know any vendors or companies that can help them solve the problem for a price that makes sense for them, right? And the third phase of selling and why people respond to cold calls is they're actively looking for a solution. This means that the prospect is hyper aware that they have a pain and they are actively looking for vendors to solve the problem. They're willing to spend money to do it. So these are going to be hot prospects who are ready to buy right now because they know they have a problem and they're ready to buy. They got a budget and they're ready to go. So when you're cold calling, right? You don't know what stage your prospect is going to be at. Some people might be unaware of pains. Some people might be aware of their pains, but they're just not ready to solve the problem, or maybe it's not a priority. And other people might be actively looking for a solution. And usually it's only about 5% of people who are actively looking. Most of the time you get unaware or aware of pains, right? But regardless, your goal is the same, and it's to make sure that the prospect, the person you're calling, is aware of the problem, and you want to become the vendor of choice to fix that problem, right? So no matter what stage you start, whether it's unaware of pains, aware of pains, looking for a solution, you're basically just moving them down this pyramid so that at one point, whether it's now or later, they're going to be looking for a solution, and hopefully that solution is going to be you. And so why people would respond to cold calls is because, one, if they are at this stage, let's say they're unaware of their pains, well, you're actually doing them a favor because they have a problem, they just don't realize it yet, and so you're giving them a friendly call to let them know, like, hey, you actually have a serious problem and I can help you out. And this way you're bringing value, right? Because if their pain is that they're not making enough revenue, or maybe their costs and expenses are too high and you can increase revenue and reduce costs, well, you're helping them out. And so if you call someone and you basically say, hey, I can make you 10 times more money than you already do now, and here's my proven methodology to do it, and I've done it with all your competitors, that person would want to listen to your phone call, right? And let's say they're aware of their pains, they know they have a problem, but they just haven't prioritized time to fix it yet. Well, if you're calling them when they're at this phase, well, it kind of is convenient for them, right? Because they have a problem, they just don't have the time. And if you are willing to spend the time to solve their problem and all they have to do is pay you money to do it, well, they are open to hearing your conversation, right? Because if you can, let's say, save someone more money than they have to spend on you, well, it's a no-brainer for them to want to work with you. Now, if you're calling them when they're actively looking for a solution but haven't found one yet, perfect. Then it's going to be a lot more easier to buy. So no matter whether someone is unaware of their pains, aware of their pains, or looking for a solution, depending on how you do the cold call, you can always bring value at every single stage. And eventually, all you're really doing is looking for problems and solving them. Now, remember this. When you're cold calling, right, you are not selling on the first call. And I want to repeat that. In most sales cycles, especially in software, technology sales, or consulting, you are not selling on the first call. All you are doing is to, give them a ring and see if it makes sense to work together in some capacity and move them along in the next step of your sales cycle. And the next step is typically not going to be closing, but to have another meeting to learn more about them. So cold call sales cycle usually works like this, right? And of course, there are going to be variations depending on the company you work at, but these are the fundamentals. The first is going to be the initial cold call, right? That's when you essentially just call the person for the first time and they pick up the phone and you introduce yourself and you explain why you're calling them. If the person picks up the phone, right, what's going to happen is you're going to have a 5 to 10 minute qualification call, right? This is where you, again, introduce yourself, tell them why you're calling, and you learn about their business, and you're really just trying to see whether or not it makes sense to work together. Now, if the prospect likes the meeting and it goes well, what's going to happen at the end of the first call, right, which is this, is they're going to agree to another meeting, which might be a 15 to 30 minute discovery call. Sometimes it can be even an hour, where you're going to dive deep into their problems to understand, what exactly their problems are and how your solution can solve it. Once you get an idea of what the discovery call is, they're going to agree to the next steps. And the next step usually is going to be some type of presentation or demonstration where you're going to show them exactly how you solve their problems that you talked about in the discovery call, but in the form of a presentation. And you kind of show them how the software works or, whatever solution that you provide. And then from there, if they agree to the next step, that's when you get into the next steps of closing the deal. That could be negotiating and, signing the contract and things like that. But, when it comes to cold calling, right, we are really just focusing on the initial call of actually calling the person, them picking up the phone, and then having a 5 to 10 minute qualification call and getting them to agree to another meeting for that discovery call. Now, as a sales and business development rep, typically if you're cold calling, you're only doing this stage. Once you set up another meeting, a lot of times what happens is an account executive, right, someone whose job it is to close, will get on this call and they will build a relationship with the client, do the demonstration, and close the deal. If you are doing the entire sales cycle by yourself, then you're going to walk them through this entire process. But if you're only doing sales and business development prospecting, you're only going to do this, right? So again, depending on your role, you might be doing a piece at the beginning of the sales cycle or the whole thing. And as you can see, the whole goal of sales essentially is to keep moving them across this funnel or this sales cycle, and you get them to agree to the next meeting and the next meeting and the next meeting, and eventually you get to the point where you actually close the deal. But again, for cold calling, we're just purely focusing on this. What do you do on the first call? How do you get them to pick up? How do you leave your voicemail so they call you back? And what do you exactly do on this qualification call to get them to the next step? And that's going to be the focus of the sales cold calling module. And so with that said, that's it for this section, and I'm going to see you in the next lesson.